Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. This is your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. I'm Robert Winfree, I'm your host. Let's see. First of all, thanks for interacting with the product. Like, comment, subscribe, share, tell a friend, tell an enemy, tell a stranger. That's kind of it. You've either got friends, enemies, or strangers out there in the world, so. Uh, I suppose acquaintances. Sure, tell an acquaintance. In fact, how about that? Not your friends, not your enemies, just someone you're a passing acquaintance with. Tell them about the show. See how. I'm just curious how many. What that might do. It's a little bit easier of a sell, maybe. Anyway, tonight we are reviewing UFC on ESPN plus 43, previewing UFC on ESPN plus 44, and it's been really light on the news front, so that's kind of it. Unless something happens between now and the end of recording, that's going to be just the show for this evening, so hopefully a fairly quick one. Not, but we'll find out. I might wind up waxing very loquacious. It's been known to happen on occasion. All right, yeah, let's jump right in. No further ado, no gilding of the lily. UFC on ESPN plus 43. Your main event. Derrick Lewis defeats Curtis Blaydes via knockout punch. Beautiful uppercut. 126 of the second round. Blaydes kind of had his way with the first round. Got clipped. I think he got clipped once or twice, but pretty much landed the better shots, controlled distance, had some good leg kicks. Then second round starts out a little bit more of the same, but Blaydes kind of tries a double leg at one point, tries to get close, and Lewis is able to escape very quickly. Leads to a bad shot from Blaydes, and ducks right into the uppercut from hell from Derrick Lewis. Blaydes was out as he hit before he hit the ground. He was out. Not the worst knockout of last night. That actually came from a boxing bout between it was Valdez and Berchelt. Oscar Valdez sent Berchelt to just the lowest level of hell. I mean, brutal knockout. But this was a gnarly one. Uh, really sucks for Blaydes, man. He was a win here, and he might not have been able to leapfrog John Jones if Jones is in fact, going to get a shot at the winner of Stipe and Ngannou too. But if he wanted to wait, I mean that's a little bit of a roll of the dice, but he would have been in a great position, to make a case for the fighting, the winner of John and the champion. Now, sucks, really sucks. Uh, Derrick Lewis now won 3 in a row, I think. Four. This was 4 in a row. I mean, I don't really count that Blagoy-Ivanov fight as a win. I thought he lost. I also thought he lost the Latifi fight. Jeez. No, wait. I thought he won the Ivanov fight. It was the Latifi fight I really kind of thought he lost. Either way. So, officially 3 in a row. 4 in a row. God. Officially 4 in a row. He's not really likely to be in the title picture. Again, you've got John kind of parachuting in. You've got the fact that his fight with Francis Ngannou, while it was a win back in 2018, was just one of the worst fights you'll ever see. Uh, he would be a fresh matchup for Stipe, but again, that assumes if Stipe beats Francis Ngannou and then John Jones. If it takes that much time, Lewis might have to fight again. But he's certainly someone you could plug in there. Somebody mentioned this on Twitter, and I went back through it because I think there's some truth to this fact, to this sentiment, not fact. Facts are true by definition. Curtis Blaydes was getting the better of the striking. I mean, striking with Derrick Lewis is certainly dangerous, but he was winning that fairly non-controversially, Then he tries to wrestle and suddenly gets knocked out, and kind of the tweet was, Derrick Lewis struggles with people who actually will strike with him. It's most wrestlers that he just devours. So I looked back at his UFC resume, which is overall quite impressive, all things considered. He debuted back in 2014 and has a very positive win-to-loss record. But if you look at his losses, they are as follows. Matt Mitrione knocked him out in 41 seconds. That was mostly on the feet. Sean Jordan, 2015, knocked him out on the feet with a kind of a hook kick and then follow-up punches. Goes on a long winning streak. Mark Hunt TKOs him in the fourth round of their main event in 2017. That fight took place again almost entirely on the feet and in the clinch. Wins a few. Uh, Almost he gets abused by Alexander Volkov for 24 minutes, 24 minutes and 30 seconds of a 25-minute fight, and then Hail Mary win. Then fights Daniel Cormier. Cormier is the only person I think to have successfully wrestled Lewis to a victory. Then he fought Junior Dos Santos after that. JDS TKO'd him, again, mostly on the feet. And then he's gone on his 4-fight winning streak since then. I don't know that I want to rewatch enough Derrick Lewis fights to kind of confirm this. But I do think there's some merit to the idea that what makes Lewis so dangerous, first of all, the man definitely has power. I'm not at all trying to talk down about that. If he hits you clean, he can finish pretty much anybody. But I do think that there's truth to the idea that the majority of what makes him really good, what has made him so successful, if nothing else, it's come from his opponents approaching him from a grappling first perspective, as opposed to a striking first perspective. The people who have, even in some of his wins, the Ivanov fight, or the Latifi fight was mostly clinch work. But I look back to some of his other wins. Okay, the Roy Nelson fight, I thought he lost. But Nelson struck with him on occasion. Travis Brown had a fair bit of success against him before he got stopped. Yeah, he mostly succeeds when people try really, really hard to wrestle him. And it's some combination of his own freakish strength, his ability to manage his energy levels appropriately, and he has really dialed in his striking offense around you kind of either gassing yourself out grappling with him or just trying to close distance in that respect. He's pretty good about catching people in those positions. The people who have actually just struck with him and kind of gone, okay, let's just strike. Volkov beat the crap out of him. That fight could have been stopped on a couple of occasions, and I don't think too many people would have complained about it. I mean, Lewis would have, and there's a segment of the MMA fan base that refuses to acknowledge any kind of stoppage being legitimate if the opponent doesn't either give up verbally or physically or is rendered completely unconscious. These people are... I don't have a lot of time for that particular sentiment. Point being, there were a few different points when Volkov had Lewis hurt really badly, and the ref could have intervened. So, I don't know that that's the only way to beat him, but even the fight he won, the Ngannou fight, Francis never shot on that guy. They just, they stared at each other a lot. They didn't do anything. But, he looked bad. They both did. That fight is awful. Okay, it was one of the worst fights of that year. I think the only fight I had listed worse than that was CM Punk and Mike Jackson. Because the less said about that monstrosity, the better. But it's just kind of a thought. Something to ponder. If you're the next guy that has to fight Derrick Lewis, maybe especially if you're a competent striker, might be worth your while just to kind of keep it in that area, because while there is danger there seems to be a lot more demonstrated danger in trying to wrestle this guy when you're not, a top-tier wrestler. Sure, Daniel Cormier could out-wrestle anybody on the UFC roster, pretty much. If we're talking pure wrestling, then I would stand by that statement. If we're talking wrestling for MMA, yeah, he out-wrestled Stipe. I think in all three of the third one I'd have to rewatch. But certainly in the first two, he out-wrestled Stipe, even when even in though he lost the second one. John out-wrestled him in their first fight. That was kind of the beauty of that performance, was John out-wrestling DC in the clinch, basically. But, okay, so you're not John Jones. But anyone else, Cormier can out-wrestle them. If you're not kind of on that level, uh, it's a you might have a better you might legitimately have a better shot at beating him if you just strike with him than if you take a bad shot. I also have a I've tried really hard to dial back some of my talk about weaknesses or in fighters here because especially at the top level of fighting, you've got habits, right? More so than weaknesses, or you're just not good at something. You might not be good at something as someone else, but it's rare that somebody gets to the UFC and they're certainly succeeds over a period of time in the UFC and has, a glaring deficiency. I mean, was Khabib Khabib as one of the modern day specialists? Was he a world class striker? No, not really. Was he a competent striker? Yes, very much so. So, not a weakness. Just, was he as good at it? If you put him and Conor McGregor in a kickboxing match, is he as good at kickboxing as Conor is? Probably not. But is he better at kickboxing than, you, me? A lot of the UFC, I mean, a surprisingly high amount of the UFC roster. I mean, people forget he outstruck Al Iaquinta for giant portions of their fight. The man could strike. He was just much better at the wrestling, obviously. And there were people who were better strikers than he was. So, not so much a weakness. And when I say this about Curtis Blaydes, I want to preface this that I am not trying to insult him. The man just got knocked out, and he's been a very successful fighter in the UFC for quite some time. That's nothing to sneeze at. I am curious why he decided to go for the double leg, especially in that instance. Both men were fighting orthodox, and when Blaydes went for the double, he then put so he's trying to drive his right shoulder into the hips, make contact, and his head is then somewhat by necessity across the body, which puts it right in the path of that Lewis uppercut, which is in fact what led to the brutal knockout. I wonder why he didn't try a single leg. Now, I know single legs might be a little bit more difficult to complete, but they also tend not to end with you being countered by that kind of an uppercut so brutally. I believe that that kind of just single leg, the snatch might even have been a snatch single. I'm gonna piss off some wrestlers if I try to use the wrong nomenclature there. But grab that front leg. Lewis is not fully heavy on it, but kind of, and it's just kind of there. Grab that, make contact. If you can't finish it from there, you can kind of duck around and get to the back. And Blaydes has a really good fence wrestling mat return game. That's more what his game is predicated on than a traditional blast double as we think about it. He's really good about fence wrestling people to death. I'm just, and again, I don't mean to kind of throw stones at the guy when he's down. That's really not the point here. I'm just curious why he did not attempt that. And it was only the second round. A minute and 30 seconds less into the second round. Maybe it was something he was trying to set up for later. I don't know. But if you do want to try to out-wrestle Derrick Lewis and use that as an avenue to victory, he's good about countering guys coming after his hips in a double leg. I think you do need a different kind of takedown. You either need to get into the clinch a different way, and then very quickly, establish some kind of dominant position in the clinch, or you just have to make him deal with that front leg, rather than try to dive after his hips. So, brutal knockout. For as long as the fight lasted, not a bad heavyweight fight. Yeah. So, that was your main event. I don't know necessarily what's next. Blaydes is going to drop down a little bit. Problem with Blaydes is he's beaten a lot. I shouldn't say he's beaten a lot of the top end of heavyweight. Let me scroll down through the heavyweight rankings here. Because he's lost to Ngannou twice. I don't think he's fought Rosenstruik, but he just lost. He beat Volkov. He beat Overeem. you have Cyril, and you have this upcoming card that's Cyril Gahn and Rosenstruik. He could fight the loser of that, because he hasn't fought either of those gentlemen. Um, didn't they release Shamil Abdurakhimov? And I don't say that to be facetious. I think the UFC cut him. He's still ranked number 8 at the moment. I might be mistaken about that. I might be confusing him with somebody else, but didn't he beat Alexei Oleinik? I think Blaydes has a win over Oleinik. Yeah, he does. And yeah, he beat Abdurakhimov anyway. Now that I'm looking at his record. In the UFC, he's beaten Oleinik, he beat Hunt, he beat Overeem, beat Willis, who seems to have vanished, beat Abdurakhimov, beat JDS, beat Volkov. And he's beaten a fair number of those guys. I mean, you could. I don't even want to see a rematch between him and Volkov. It's not the worst potential rematch, but I don't know. That's not really what I think they should do with him. Again, you've got Gahn and Rosenstruik. Both the loser of that's going to need a fight, and I think would potentially be all right for Blaydes. You have Augusto Sakai on the come up. Yeah, so you've got some options there, but it really sucks for him. As for Lewis, maybe Lewis fights the winner of Rosenstruik and Gahn, because I don't believe he's not fought either of those gentlemen. And that would be the way the timing might work out. That would be if that fight gets made, the winner of that would be the next for the winner of Jones and whatever heavyweight champion, assuming that's what they do with John. That is my assumption going forward, but if I'm incorrect about that, the calculus changes. Yeah, again, main event, second round, brutal knockout. Really nice uppercut. All right, co-main event, the rest of these are going to go a little bit quicker. Yana Kunitskaya defeated Ketlin Vieja via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Little surprised by this. I respect it. I had Vieja taking the first and third. Kunitskaya had the second. I'm not sure what the official swing round was for the judges. Um, I think the thought that a lot of people had live was that Vieja had won the first, so going into the third would decide the fight. Vieja spent a giant portion of the third round with floating between full mount and back mount on Kunitskaya. And with about 30 seconds left, give or take, Kunitskaya is able to spin into Vieja, get inner full guard, and then unleash some elbows for the last little bit. This was a weird one. I might have to rewatch this if I wanted to really kind of try and dial in my thoughts about it. So the point being, Kunitskaya won either the first or third round while being primarily on her back. I tend to think there's a better argument for her winning the first, because Vieja did not have nearly the positional dominance that she did in the third. Again, I understand the argument that the person doing damage is the one winning. The person actively trying to finish, doing damage, etc., with the more effective offense. But you have to do, to my estimation, and maybe this is simply my own personal stance on things, you need to do something fairly significant to overcome a giant positional deficit. And Vieja had significant positional advantages for long periods of time in that third round. I think there might be a better argument for Kunitskaya taking the first as opposed to the third. I might be wrong about that, but we'll see. I'd have to look up the specific scorecards. Somewhat surprising, but again, I respect it. And here's the reality of that first round. If the first round decided things, Vieja had some takedowns and had top control, but she didn't do a whole lot with it. And she kind of got chewed up with knees in the clinch. If it's the third round, I don't think there's as good an argument. Again, the positional disadvantage was so significant for so long a period of time that I'm not sure a 20-second flurry at the end of the fight Even though Kunitskaya, she landed a good elbow in the end there and cut Vieja open. Uh, I'm not sure that was enough for me to have seen to score the round for her. But ultimately, again, I respect the fact that the judges looked at either the first or third and went, okay, you didn't actually do enough with your positions to have warranted us giving you the round. Uh, I think, as with most of these things, this might be an overcorrection. That used to be, hey, I'm in top, I'm in full guard, and I'm going to hold you here, and I win the round, right? Even though I do almost nothing. Yeah, you win the round, good for you. We might be overcorrecting here to the point where, yeah, you had 3 minutes of mount time, but, well, you only landed a few shots, and then there was this 3 to 5 second flurry from your opponent. Like, those two things are not equivalent. Uh, but so it might be an overcorrection and just kind of the generalized way of thinking by the judges, but ultimately I respect it. I respect the fact that they looked at what Kunitskaya did from an efficacy standpoint and went, okay, even though you were at significant positional disadvantages, Vieja didn't really threaten with too many. She didn't have a couple of close submission attempts. She didn't land a whole lot, and those things do matter. So, uh, significant upset. I think this is one of the larger upsets recently. So, sorry, Derrick Lewis was the biggest upset in a while. He was what, plus 350, I think, something like that. Again, significant underdog. Kunitskaya was a non-trivial underdog actually. So, yeah, kudos to her. That's one of the bigger wins of her career. She should be aiming for someone in the top 5 at women's bantamweight. So she should be looking at. Let's see. I think they mentioned. I think one of the news items, and I'm not going to go too deep into that. I think they said that Juliana Pena and Holly Holm were going to fight, which is not a terrible fight. Could do Vieja and Irene Aldana. Aspen Ladd and Jermaine Durandamy both need fights. So Kunitskaya against any of them, she's earned a shot at that level of opposition. Because, yeah, this was between 6 and 7. Vieja was 6. Kunitskaya was 7. So she should be aiming for somebody in the top 5 next. Let's see. Derek Minner defeated Charles Rosa via unanimous decision. 30-26, 30-27, 29-27. I don't know which round that judge gave to Charles Rosa, but I disagree with it. I was 30-27. I was 30-26 for Minner. It's not that Rosa was out of his depth on his back, but I don't know. He just was always on the losing end of the positions. So solid win for Minner. Heavyweight, Chris Daukaus defeated Alexei Oleinik via TKO 155 of the first. This was a pretty nasty standing TKO against the fence. Chris Daukaus is legit. He's a lighter heavyweight. He's got fast hands. Clearly has good power. Good decision making too. The time Oleinik was able to clinch up at one point, and he did the right things to get out of there as quickly as possible. He clearly wanted no part of that. So Daukaus, Oleinik was number 10, I believe. Yes. God, heavyweight. Where are you? Yeah, he was 10. So Daukaus will probably be around that spot and should be aiming for. You do him and Shamil Abdurakhimov, him and Augusto Sakai, both make sense. The Overeem, Overeem coming off of that loss. Overeem and Daukaus, could make a lot of sense. So it's still a little young in his career, but he just took out number 10 in the world. Now the number 10 contender by the UFC's rankings, for whatever, for however much value you want to ascribe that. But yeah, he's earned a shot at somebody above that. I mean, if nothing else, his next opponent is guaranteed to be ranked and should probably be, depending on where they put him, should be around that same area, so somewhere between like 8 and 10. Again, however the rankings shake out after this event. Let's see. Phil Hawes defeated Nasruddin Imavov via majority decision, 128-28 and then 2 29-28s. I think I actually scored this for Imavov. Um, First round to Hawes. I thought the second round went. I gave Imavov the second. He got kind of controlled along the fence at periods, but he hurt Hawes. He hurt Hawes in the striking there, and then he took the third round. The 28-28 I think stems from a 10-8 third for Imavov, which I don't disagree with. It's a marginal 10-8, but he hurt Hawes a couple of times in that one. So I scored it for Imavov. I think Hawes got a little bit fortunate here. If he can't blitz you, he very much is kind of a try to stall you out guy. Might be a bit of a problem, but I think both of these gentlemen have still have some fairly bright futures actually. And kicking off the main card, Tom Aspinall defeated Andrei Arlovsky via submission, rear naked choke, 109 of the second. All Aspinall in the first round. Hurt Arlovsky fairly early, actually, but Arlovsky kind of rallied, settled himself down, slowed things down. Second round, Aspinall gets him backing up, striking, and then hits a double leg. Arlovsky has very good takedown defense. Getting him down the way he did was the product of timing and expectation. Arlovsky clearly did not expect that at all, and then he just kind of he wasn't expecting it, which led to some really nice timing on the part of Aspinall. Got him down against the fence. Arlovsky gets to his knees, tries to come up. Aspinall grabs the choke on the way up, gets the tap. Solid win for Aspinall. I mean, a lot of us kind of joke about Arlovsky these days, but this was only the second time in his entire career that he'd been submitted. The only other guy to do it was Josh Barnett. That was, I forget how many years ago. But, yeah. Aspinall's we got Aspinall and Dawkins kind of making waves. Heavyweight has a little bit of new blood, which is good because that was desperately needed. As for the prelims, sorry, I forgot to mention a couple of things. There are a lot of people that missed weight on this card. Caitlin Vieja missed weight. There was supposed to be a fight between... the names are escaping me. Give me a second. Rafael Alves and who was he fighting? Pat Sabatini. Alves missed weight catastrophically. He missed it by 11 pounds. He weighed 157.5 for a featherweight fight. So to my way of thinking, that's like 12.5 pounds. That was a huge miss. Now, that is the biggest miss on the scale in UFC history. He's the first guy to actually, because Rumble Johnson used to hold that record, I seem to recall. Now, to his credit, he did say that I think he and a few of his teammates got sick when they had they'd ordered some. They got food poisoning from some salmon that they ordered. Look, if this is true, and assuming it's true, I don't hold him terribly responsible for that, believe it or not. Eating salmon, and I don't think this wasn't raw either. This was, I think it was just cooked salmon. Salmon is a very common thing that that fighters eat when they're managing their weight, be that before, when they're cutting down, or after the fact when they're kind of trying to replenish themselves. It's a very, very common food that goes into that process. And if he got served bad salmon, that's just miserable luck. And I've had food poisoning. That's some of the worst I've ever felt in my entire life. That and working at Kmart. I'm never quite sure which was worse, but I was about 12 hours away from going into the hospital. I was that sick. I couldn't keep anything down. So if that's what happened, and if he got bad fish from a otherwise somewhat reputable source, that's just kind of the randomness of the universe. This is not Diego Sanchez eating beef tartare with a raw quail leg on top and then getting food poisoning ahead of a fight. That's entirely foreseeable. Try not to eat raw beef and eggs after you've cut weight. I don't think that's a controversial proposition. Though anyone who knows more about the weight cutting process than I do is free to correct me. But salmon after the fact, that's common, man. Especially guys who have significant weight cuts. Salmon like that is one of the things they can eat fairly safely without impacting things too much. So if that's the case, I hope he gets another shot. But if not, that's a huge miss. Anyway, on to a couple of other misses. Jared Gordon defeated Danny Chavez via unanimous decision, 230-27, 129-28. Gordon missed weight here. He weighed 150 for the featherweight fight. Gordon, I don't know, man. He's missed before, hasn't he? I think he has. Yeah, he's missed at featherweight before. Once in the UFC, actually. His UFC debut. He weighed 149. I think that was... I think the caveat there was that was kind of a short notice thing. Then he went up to lightweight for a couple of fights. Maybe just the one fight. I don't know. I forget where. I think a couple of fights. Kind of went back to featherweight. I don't know. He's a little bit undersized at lightweight, but he clearly struggles with featherweight. So, I don't know. That he's gonna have to figure that out one way or the other, because this is not twice in a row, but this is two misses now, and that's that's something he's got to figure out. We had another fight that was canceled. We were supposed to have a fight between Chaz Skelly and Jamal Emmers. Chaz Skelly walked to the cage, and somewhere along the way, between him walking, from the back to the cage, Jamal Emmers, I don't know how long it had been going on, but he got a couple of really bad back spasms apparently, and couldn't make it to the cage. I've had, not to make this about me, I promise. I've not had too many serious back spasms, certainly nothing chronically. I had, I think, one period of about 36 hours where I had them, and that sucked. And mine were not, I believe, all that severe. Just every so often, this random just stabbing pain up through the side of your back as muscles start going where they're not supposed to go. It's it sucks. And if this was something he'd been dealing with apparently, so his might have been significantly worse than mine. That sucks, man. He trained for this camp, he made weight, and then to have something medically just debilitate you like that, it sucks. This was, I believe, the first time in UFC history, not that a fight was called off because of a medical reason before it happened. That's happened a few times the night of the event, or even once the event has started. But when one fighter is actually in the cage when it happens, that was a first. I think that's a first in the history of the promotion. Not the sport, obviously. The sport's crazy. But I think that was a UFC first. Anyway, moving on. Bantamweight, John Castaneda defeated Eddie Wineland via TKO 444 of the first. Nice finishing sequence from Castaneda here. He kind of darted off with a right hand that stunned Wineland, and then his follow-up sequence was nice. Featherweight, Julian Erosa defeated Nate Landwehr via TKO, flying knee 56 seconds into the first. This was a hockey fight for as long as it lasted, and then Erosa threw the flying knee, and Landwehr protested the stoppage. I was okay with it. You watch kind of the way he fell. Yeah. Let's see. Casey O'Neill defeated Shauna Dobson via TKO punches, 344 of the second. O'Neill, not like wildly reckless, but she has a very clear kind of philosophy about her fighting, I think. She does a little bit of... There's a somewhat famous quote from Napoleon. When he was, conquering France and building his empire, he pressed a lot of people into service for his army. And there was a lot of military theory going on around the time that it was that ace. We're talking armies in the Napoleonic era, so they're still very large. But there was still kind of a general thought that you wanted a higher quality of soldier. So you may not have this, the same number, but your troops would be better. They'd be better prepared. They'd be better trained, and this would make up for the numerical disparity. And that was kind of the prevailing military thinking. When asked about this, or it was brought up, and Napoleon's quote to the contrary was simply, "Quantity has a quality all its own." Uh, Casey O'Neill threw everything but the kitchen sink at Shauna Dobson. They traded on the feet. They both landed. She got close. She got takedowns, and on the ground it was just more or less non-stop offense, passing, more offense. Just overwhelmed Dobson. O'Neill's still pretty raw. This was just her sixth, I think, professional fight, but might be someone to pay attention to. See, Ayman Zahabi defeated Draco Rodriguez via knockout punch, 305 of the first. Rodriguez, another guy that missed weight. He weighed 140 for the bantamweight fight here. Zahabi's been pretty inactive. He missed all of 2020. Good win for him. This was a really nice kind of straight 1-2 counter to a poorly executed uppercut from Rodriguez. And kicking everything off, Sergey Spivak defeated Jared Vandera via TKO, 432 of the second. This was all Spivak, basically. Got Vandera down and just pounded him out. First round, second round, more of the same. Earned the stoppage. No fight of the night. Your performance of the nights. The bonuses went to Derrick Lewis, Chris Dawkins, Tom Aspinall, Ayman Zahabi. Sucks for a lot of guys. There was a piece put out. I forget where it was from. The UFC, Dana White, I think, talked with the New York Post. I think might have been the one that ran it. Talked a little bit about the UFC's discretionary bonuses. There was a response piece on, I want to say, Bloody Elbow. I forget the author. I apologize. It was a really good piece that delved a little bit more in depth into that whole process, talking with some current and former UFC fighters. There's a lot of guys who just barely missed out on some serious cash here. That sucks. Of course, it also just kind of sucks that your multi-billion-dollar company has its product, and the only reason you're able to achieve that status in the fighters, routinely just begging and lobbying for 50 grand. It's a shame. I mean, again, the only one that can do anything about it at this point are the fighters, and not gonna rehash that argument. Not a whole lot has changed since the last time it was discussed. The other fight we lost on this card was supposed to be Drakkar Klose and Luis Pena. Pena had stepped in on short notice. Was called off. One of Klose's cornermen tested positive for COVID. They're trying to rebook that for something in the next couple of weeks, so hopefully it sticks together. This card lost a few of the fights I was really looking forward to. All right, so that was it. Thank you very much to everyone who read my coverage live or after the fact. I appreciate you guys, so thank you very much for that. Let's move on. UFC on ESPN Plus 44 this coming Saturday. This is not gonna take long to preview, I think. Yeah, I'm just not gonna talk about. There's some decent fights here, but I don't know how long this is gonna take, so hopefully not too long. Main event: Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Cyril Gane. Rozenstruik. Let's see. He got knocked out by Francis badly. Rebounded against Junior, and that was the most like JDS fight ever. Junior looks really good for about a round and a half, and then gets caught just because he keeps putting it. Then abandons his technical game plan and gets caught and knocked out. That's just such a Junior thing to do these days. But he's never been the distance. I mean, the Overeem fight very nearly was. But all of his wins in the UFC have been via finish. All of his wins but one, if we talk about his entire career, have been via finish. Well, Gane, undefeated, 7-0, TKO JDS's last fight. This is potentially very interesting. Two very large guys. Some very different styles. Rosenstruik a bit more on the technical kickboxer side of things. Gane has a little bit more of the kind of point karate bounce to his style. Um, both men strikers kind of first and foremost, but have certainly demonstrated a degree of competence in all aspects of the fight game. It's a solid heavyweight fight, actually. I'm a little surprised at five. I don't know who 5 rounds will favor. The only time we saw Rosenstruik go that long, he again got beat up for almost all of it and got a Hail Mary win. This will be Gane's first time even being scheduled for 5, I think. I want to confirm that. No, actually. He's been scheduled for 5 rounds twice before on the regional scene. Geez, maybe 3 times? His professional debut, he won the vacant TKO heavyweight title, so I assume that was a 5-round fight in terms of how long it was scheduled. Then he defended it twice before signing to the UFC. So he's never been out of the third. He's had 2 fights go the 3 he's had 1 fight end in the third, and then 1 went the distance. So remains to be seen how he'll hold up over 5 rounds potentially, but it's a good fight. I don't really know who to favor here. You could make a very, very compelling case for either guy. I'm going to lean towards Gane, but I don't know. Again, wouldn't be shocked to see either guy win. It's a good fight. Co-main event. Light heavyweight fight. Nikita Krylov and Magomed Ankalaev. Can you believe we wasted, 18 months or 2 years of Magomed Ankalaev on that stupid Iwan Kutalaba thing? What a giant waste of that guy's time and potential. Krylov, another guy that has a fair bit of potential. I mean, he's 28. He beat Johnny Walker his last time out. He had the split decision loss to Glover Teixeira that, frankly, I thought he won. And then you have Ankalaev, who looks to be the real deal at heavyweight. He only has light heavyweight. He only has 1 loss ever. It was in his UFC debut. It was a fight he dominated before he got caught in a triangle choke with 1 second left. He tapped with 1 second left in the fight. And then for some reason, everyone just kind of forgot how good he was. He then proceeded to go on a winning streak, where he knocked out Marcin Prachnio, beat Klidson Abreu, knocked out Dolce Lungiambula, TKO'd Iwan Kutalaba, but everybody threw a fit, so 9 months later. Yeah, they tried to make that Kutalaba fight several times. They finally made it on February of 2020. He wins, but nobody likes the stoppage. So they tried to rebook it a couple of times. It fell through a couple of times. It finally got back together in October of 2020. And he knocked him out in 4 minutes and 19 seconds in a horribly non-competitive fight. This guy wasted all of 2020 on Iwan Kutalaba. Baffling. Just baffling decision making. I like Ankalaev here. I won't be shocked if Krylov wins. Again, Krylov has some very legitimate skills. But Ankalaev is one of the few guys who I think might be able to break through the miasma at light heavyweight. Welterweight fight. Randy Brown and Alex Oliveira. Randy Brown's he's got a weird UFC career. He's got 4 losses in the all of his professional losses are in the UFC. The losses are he lost to Michael Graves, who wound up fizzling out. 1-2, lost to Bilal Muhammad, who turns out to be a very, very top-end welterweight. Beat Mickey Gall in a fight that we all kind of wondered why it was booked. Got knocked out by Nico Price with hammer fist from the bottom. Funniest thing. Won a couple of fights, then got brutally knocked out by Vicente Luque in his last fight. I tend to favor Randy Brown here, but Alex Oliveira is certainly no one to trifle with. He might be the dirtiest fighter in the entire UFC, but he's a rugged guy. And if you fight his kind of fight, he can beat you. Oliveira was last seen losing to Shavkat Rachmanov, excuse me, Shavmat Rachmanov, who looked really darn good doing it, actually. Yeah, I'll favor Brown, but again, yeah, that's a dicey fight. Bantamweight fight, great fight. I think this was supposed to happen earlier. Let's see. These two have fought before, but we're getting a rematch. Yeah, they were supposed to fight at the Chiesa and Magny card. They got moved. They got moved again. They were supposed to fight at UFC 258. That got removed due to COVID test-related issues. Hopefully it holds together. The last time these two fought, Rivera won a split decision. I still tend to favor Rivera, but this should be a good fight. That's kind of your one fight to really pay attention to on this. The bantamweight brings it as a division. And kicking off the main card, Alex Caceres will fight Kevin Kroom. Was he supposed to fight somebody else? No, this was always this fight. Alright, I need to look up Mr. Kroom here. I might have... I don't know, his name is just like loosely familiar enough. He fought in the UFC? Yeah, he had a fight with Roosevelt Roberts that went to a no contest. Did he lose that? Hmm. I forget who won that. I think Roberts won that initially. And then... Yeah, I need to confirm this now one way or the other. Let's see. That was the Hill and Watterson card. So that would be from September of 2020. No, Kroom won that originally. That's why he's familiar. Because that was a significant upset. Overturned after he tested positive for marijuana. Come on, guys. Okay, I'm gonna pick Kroom actually, believe it or not. Probably stupid of me. Cause I mean, look, Alex Caceres just kind of is what he is at this point. He's just kind of a filler member of the roster, but he's not easy to beat. Uh, and if you look at his losses and the guys he's lost here, because some of them earlier in his career, earlier in his UFC tenure, a little bit more like, huh? But more recently, it's guys like Yair Rodriguez, Jason Knight, Kron Gracie. It's not easy at all to best him in a fight. So probably silly of me, but I'm gonna do it. All right, let's see. We will have some of the orders a little bit off here. Some fights have kind of materialized late. We'll have Angela Hill and Ashley Yoder. Pretty easy pick of Hill there, but it would be just like Hill to slip on the banana peel. Let's see. Honey Barcelos will fight Marcel Rojo. Barcelos was supposed to fight Rafael Assunção. Assunção pulled out. I think it was a COVID issue. Yeah, tested positive for COVID. So Rojo's stepping in on short notice. I'll pick Barcelos there. I might have picked Barcelos over Assunção. And that's not an easy thing to do. Picking anybody over Assunção is a little bit dicey, but I do feel pretty strongly about Barcelos' upside. The man's never lost in the UFC. So I feel pretty confident picking him over Rojo here. See, we'll have Alexander Hernandez and Thiago Moises. Significant spot for Hernandez. He needs to win pretty badly. I mean, he knocked out Chris Gruetzemacher in his last fight, but he needs to find some consistency. Whereas Moises, what's he been up to? He beat Bobby Green last year, and he tapped Michael Johnson. Hmm. He kind of needs this fight to be on the ground, and I don't know how easily he'll be able to get Hernandez there. Hmm. I'm gonna pick Moises, but that's only because I think Hernandez might be one of those win one, lose one guys at this point. Women's bantamweight fight: Sabina Mazo and Alexis Davis. Let's see. Davis has lost 3 in a row. Jeez. That's not good. Whereas Mazo lost her UFC debut, but has bounced back pretty well. I'll pick Mazo. I think Davis might be on the downside of her career, but that's a non-trivial test for Mazo. The light heavyweight fight: Alonzo Menefield and William Knight. Knight, I seem to recall. Yeah, he won his UFC debut when he beat Alexa Kammer. Knight is. Oh, I remember Knight. That man is bricked up. Of course, then again, Alonzo Menefield's not exactly a slouch in the physique department either. Menefield's lost 2 in a row. He got out wrestled by Devin Clark and then did well against Ovin St. Preux before he just kind of walked into a counterpunch. Hmm. I'm gonna pick Knight, actually. Yeah, I'm gonna pick Knight. Let's see, bantamweight Vince Cachero will fight Ronnie Lawrence. Where's that Honey Lawrence? This gentleman is American. I'm gonna assume Ronnie. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. This is his UFC debut. Ditto Cachero. No, Cachero lost his UFC debut. He lost to Jamal Emmers. I have no memory of that fight. Not sure why. I'll pick Lawrence. And kicking everything off, Dustin Jacoby and Maxim Grishin. Jacoby, he re-debuted in the UFC recently and he beat Justin Ledet. He looked pretty good in that fight, actually. Whereas Grishin, very experienced fighter. He had a successful UFC debut, I seem to recall. He's 1-1. Oh yeah, he took a short notice fight with Marcin Tybura, lost, and then went back to light heavyweight, which is where he normally fights, and stopped Gadzhimurad and Tagulov. Jacoby's no slouch. I'm gonna pick Grishin, but that's not a gimme fight for either guy. That one might not be a very interesting fight, but I think that's probably going to be a tough fight for both guys. Anyway, that's it. This card is there's some decent stuff here. Munoz and Rivera's good. The main event's actually pretty good on paper. Krylov and Ankalaev isn't bad. We're really just kind of treading water though, because not this coming Saturday, but the next one, March 6th, we have our triple header of championship, or our triple title fight card, UFC 259, when Jan Blachowicz fights Israel Adesanya, Amanda Nunes fights Megan Anderson, and Peter Yan fights Aljamain Sterling. Man, those are some fights. That is some quality fights. The rest of that card isn't awful. Looking at kind of what we have listed here, Islam Makhachev and Drew Dober is a pretty serious test for both guys. Joseph Benavidez and Askar Askarov is a good fight. See, Dominic Cruz and Casey Kenny is a good fight. Alexander Rakic and Thiago Santos. I don't think again, what happens at light heavyweight is, I don't want to get too deep into this. I want to talk more about it next week. But what happens at light heavyweight is going to be really interesting, kind of depending on what happens here. If either Rakic or Santos. You've got Glover Teixeira out there still. Where's Glover ranked at the moment? So you're probably not going to get the next title contender out of this fight because you've got Glover sitting at number 1. But if Rakic beats Thiago Santos, especially if he does so impressively, uh, I mean, Rakic's only loss in the UFC was a split decision to Volkan Oezdemir. He coming off a win over Anthony Smith. If Rakic beats Santos, he might be. I can't. Again, you got Teixeira there going. I've won so many fights in a row. What else do you got to do? But that's also going to be kind of dependent on what happens. I mean, the reality is this, as far as light heavyweight, as far as that main event goes. If Israel Adesanya wins, he will be a dual champion, middleweight and light heavyweight. He's not going to retain that. The UFC has never allowed anyone to really hold those. They let Conor do it for way too long for publicity reasons. They let Amanda Nunes do it now because there's not actually a featherweight division, and she already cleaned out bantamweight, basically. So when you're in her position, they don't really care. They let you hold the 2 belts and knock yourself out. One of those isn't a, again, featherweight is not a division. Light heavyweight might be a bit of a dumpster fire in some respects. Not as bad as it used to be. Like in fairness, it's not near as bad as it used to be. But light heavyweight may not be a good division, but it's a real division. Middleweight is actually a good division. You're not going to get a champion of 2 divisions. I mean, Conor, they let Conor keep the lightweight belt for way too long. They took the featherweight belt off him relatively quickly. I mean, they had the interim title fight between Edgar and Aldo, but it wasn't long after that they promoted Aldo to champion. So Adesanya's not going to hold both of those belts for very long. It's just not feasible. He can't fight 4 times a year, and you can't retain the divisional integrity. You can't. I mean, 4 fights a year is a lot for anybody at the top end of the sport. 4 title fights in a year is borderline absurd. Assuming he even is able to stay healthy and on schedule and everything, it's just. And even then, that would limit you to 2 title fights for light heavyweight and middleweight per year. And you'd be running the guy into the ground trying to work that schedule, and you'd probably wind up with viable contenders killing each other off. It's just not going to happen. So the question, if Adesanya wins, would be which of those belts is he going to give up, which is he going to hold on to, and that's, again, that assumes he wins, which is certainly not a given. I might favor him, in fact I do, but not a given. Jan Blachowicz is nobody's easy out. Even the people that beat him, that's not an easy out. So, Rakic or Teixeira just beat Santos is kind of the problem. So if Santos wins, that clears the road for Glover to say, I don't care who the next champion is. If it's Jan, bring it. If it's Adesanya, bring it. If Adesanya wins and drops 205, fine, for the vacant belt, I'm half of that equation. His case if Rakic wins, again, if he does so impressively, and then Adesanya vacates, Rakic and Teixeira for the vacant belt, not the worst idea in the world. Not the worst idea in the world at all. So, anyway, we'll have a full breakdown of that event next week. So, little preview of my thoughts there. Come back for that, please. Yeah, that's kind of all I've got. Let me check Twitter. See if anything crazy happened as it relates to MMA, and if not, we'll get into plugs and get out of here. Nope. Nothing else is broken, so let's get into plugs and get out of here. Short episode this week. Let's see. Whew, boy. Did a fair bit of stuff this week. I covered WWE SmackDown on Fridays in the Wrestling Zone of 411 Mania. I cover MLW Wednesdays. My last review hasn't gone up yet. I'm curious what that's about. Of course, it would be the one show in the last couple of weeks I was very positive about. If you're into pro wrestling and you have a sense of humor, those two things being mutually exclusive more often than not, I suppose. The Filthy Island episode of MLW Fusion, I laughed so hard. So you can find me doing that. Let's see, I had a couple of Damn You Hollywoods this week. On Monday. I reviewed Space Sweepers, the Korean language Netflix science fiction sort of thriller. I reviewed that with Sean Comer, so you can listen to that if you're interested in my review of that. Then Tuesday, there was a Damn You Hollywood with the regular crew, myself, Mark Radulich, and Alexis Haina, and we talked Willy's Wonderland. What a wild trip that movie is. If you have not heard of this, look up the trailer. And if I could sell you on that movie with a single kind of explanation about something that happens. Nicolas Cage curb stomps an animatronic gorilla into a urinal. If that doesn't sell you on it, the movie's just straight up not for you. And I don't hold that against anybody for the record, but so we talked about that. Earlier today, we had a TV party for the anime series Demon Slayer. Mark and his daughter Lily wanted to talk about it, so I said I'm happy to show up, help hold up the conversation. David Wright joined us as well. And yeah, you can find us. So you can find that if you're so inclined to hear our thoughts about Demon Slayer and a little bit of anime in general. That was a fun time. There's a fairly decent chance I will be on a TV party this coming Tuesday for the... I suppose I have to call it a television series. The 10 episode thing on Amazon called Too Old to Die Young. It is certainly something. So be aware that I might be on that. And then on the 25th, there will be a Damn You Hollywood for the Netflix exclusive movie I Care a Lot, starring Peter Dinklage and Rosamund Pike. So that's what I've got on this upcoming week. And then, of course, Saturday, UFC on ESPN plus 44. Yep, I am doing stuff. Things. Stuff and things. The both of them. Though I suppose you could do one without the other. Alright, that's it for me. Thank you all very much. I deeply appreciate you. Once again, like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share, all of it. Any of it. It's all helpful. Till next time. Let's see, next week. So yeah, next week, preview of UFC 259. Should be that is a heck of a card. That is a heck of a card. Hopefully nothing falls out between now and then, but the rate we're going, you never know. Alright, that's it. Protracted outro out of the way. See y'all next time. Until then, stay safe out there as usual, and please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.